Welcome to a card making demo for a card with 3 layers. Please begin by cutting 3 pieces of paper. The first should be 9 by 6 1/4 inches, then 8 1/4 by 6 1/4 inches. The third page should be 6 1/4 inches square. Pause here if you have not yet cut all 3. If you have, you can use a variety of tools in order to apply the folds that are marked on the template. For the first paper, which is the 9 by 6 1/4, you could, for example, use a paper clip to pre-crease a center fold in this card. This paper is going to form the base of your card. I'm using the back of my thumbnail to reinforce this crease. It works, it does not require extra supplies, but it gets physically uncomfortable after a while. In the second template, notice that there are 3 folds to make. I'm going to use a ball-ended stylus. It's metal. It, like the paper clip, sometimes leaves a little bit of a metal residue on the paper, and on thin papers it can sometimes tear the paper. But it is more comfortable to hold than the paper clip. So here I am pre-creasing the center fold, the center valley fold that is, and then I am making 2 creases that are indented by 1 inch on either side that will form flaps by which to attach this to the base card. I am going to use a spoon in just a moment to reinforce these folds. If you put your thumb in the bowl of the spoon, it can be a lot more comfortable than using the back of a fingernail. And hopefully you have a spoon that is clean. And you can just reverse one of those folds in order to have the combination of valley and mountain folds specified by the template. Though different in size, the third will also involve 1 inch tabs with mountain folds and a center valley fold. In this case, I'm going to use my favorite bookmaking tool for this purpose, which is a bone folder. Some are made out of plastic instead, but what I have found is that unlike metal, bone or plastic tend to crease the paper with a far reduced likelihood of cutting into it. The other thing that is handy is that the flat area of the bone folder can be used in order to burnish or reinforce these creases, which you will see me do in just a moment. I start at the center and move outwards whenever possible. Pause the video at this place until you have managed to get all 3 papers folded according to the template provided. Once you have all 3 papers cut and folded, it will be time to assemble them. So quickly, I'm just going to show without any adhesive the order in which they would appear. The smallest layer goes on the inside. Sometimes I omit it in certain designs. That's why I labeled it number 3, because it's essentially optional. In this demo, however, I want to show you all 3 to give a foreground, middle ground, and background in this card. So here I have what was labeled template number 3 and 1. You have options with your adhesive. You can go with tape, like masking tape. I use that for mock-ups. You can go with double-sided tape. You can go with glue sticks, or you can go with liquid glue. The latter 2, I strongly recommend budgeting a little bit of time to allow them to dry under pressure. They will be the strongest bonds, but they need a little bit more time to get there. So here I have template 3 and template 1 and some double-sided tape that I'm going to use to adhere them. But first, where am I going to adhere that? I'm going to make a measurement 1 1/2 inches indented from the left edge on the piece of paper I cut according to template 1. My apologies for the reflections. It makes the ruler illegible to you. And this pencil mark will be covered up, so don't worry about it being conspicuous. I find it is much easier if I place the tape alongside this drawn line than if I do it along the, what I have in this case as blue paper, but template 3. Your results may differ, but I've tried it both ways, and this is more accurate for me. So I apply the paper to the tape here, trying to get that mount and fold to coincide with the line that I just drew and getting it well pressed. However, for this second side, it is easiest to place some tape right next to the hinge of that paper that I'm referring to as template 3, and then to just close the green paper, that is to say template 1, onto it. What's great about that, as opposed to measuring from the right by 1.5 inches, which you absolutely could do and apply tape there, what this does is it accounts for the additional thickness of the paper just automatically, so it will open tidily and cleanly, and you will get that little suspended layer within your card. Finally, we're going to add layer 2. In this case, I have, through trial and error, found it easiest to apply tape just to the outside edge here. You can, of course, affix this flap to the inside, but it's more structurally strong this way if you think about the way that in which people are going to be applying pressure as they open the card. Your sense of feel for when that sort of mount and fold is properly situated on the card edge is going to be more useful than just eyeballing it. You want to reinforce it, starting, as ever, from the center to the outside to avoid bubbles. And again, I am going to close this paper onto the tape. You can adjust the lengths of templates 2 and 3 to a certain extent, but they do still need to be able to nestle inside each other. Now you can see a little strip of that pink showing. It's quite likely that my ruler slipped at some point to a small degree. So, rather than freaking out about it, I am just going to lay a ruler right on top of it and trim it using an X-Acto knife. If you use liquid glue, you would want to wait to make sure that the glue is thoroughly dried before you take this measure. And then your card will be done. The way in which to make it more elaborate is to have cut holes or added other elaborations to these layers before you glue them together, but this is the basic format of the Carousel style single unit or Carousel style book. Here's one example on the right of several layers cut out, and they give a good sense of complexity. The rest of this video only matters if you want to be able to resize this template to suit yourself. So I, for example, have these envelopes that are 4.75 inches in one dimension. So I've decided that a 4.5 inch card will fit into it with a little bit of ease for thickness of paper or me messing up a measurement by a tiny bit. And I mentioned earlier that I designed it to open to roughly 45 degrees, which means it's a right triangle, which means in order to find the length of the paper I need for the opening, I can use the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared, and since the two sides are the same, that's just squaring 4.5 a couple of times and adding it. When I solve for c, eventually, I will have the length of the paper I need for the opening, and then I will add 1 inch to either side in order to have an ample amount of flap to wrap around the edges. If I were truly short on paper and it was the perfect paper, I might in that sort of a case make those tabs a little bit smaller, but I find it is a place where robustness is a desirable quality. 6 1/8 inch. Yeah, so it worked out to 6 3/8 inches, but 6 1/8 was a little bit easier to measure, and that 45 degrees is an ish. It doesn't need to be perfectly 45 degrees. Next up, how big do I make the middle part of that paper? Still want it to be roughly opening to 45 degrees. I'm going to have it open, be inset by 1.5 inches. So this, if the side as a whole is 4.5 inches, that means that the point of attachment for the remaining side is going to be 3 inches away from the center valley fold. And then we just bust out the Pythagorean theorem again. 3 squared plus 3 squared equals c squared in this instance. Yeah, I'm working from my notes. They were messy, however, as opposed to these. but that is roughly how I got to the idea that 4.24 inches was the length of C. You know, I'm never going to measure that precisely with my ruler, so I just measured 4.25 inches. And then again, added an inch to either side because you need to be able to attach it to the actual card, so you need those tabs. Which is how I came up with the idea of cutting out a piece of paper that it measures 6.25 inches for this. If you have a different size card that you're trying to make, you just plug in different variables to the Pythagorean theorem, and there you have it.